Hi, everybody. This is Sean Spicer from Agile IT. Hosting this week's Tech Talk as Conrad Agramont is out on a much-earned vacation. Happy New Year. This is the first Tech Talk of the year, and very happy to be joined here today with Matt Soseman, who's done a number of Tech Talks with us before. He's a Microsoft security architect and expert in all things Microsoft 365 security. So if you do have security questions, we will open the lines up at the end. This session will be recorded. We will turn off that recording as soon as the Q&A opens in order to protect your privacy and allow those questions to come through freely. So Matt, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Happy New Year, and hope you had a great holiday break. I know I did, although it's not always long enough, but happy to be back.
All right, and today we're going to be talking about spoofing protections. This is something I've seen a lot of discussion out on the various forums, on TechNet, on Reddit, so I think this is a very important topic. I was looking for it, but I deleted it. I actually got a spoofing attempt that was stopped by Microsoft 365. It was just a simple email from Conrad asking me to give him to shoot him an email real quick, and that he had something I needed to take care of with a credit card. Since I know they don't trust me with a credit card, I knew that it was fake, but that's the general gist of what spoofing is. I'm going to go ahead and share or move you over to presenter here, Matt.
Okay, perfect. Well, just load up a few things here, but while that's loading, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Matt Soseman. I'm a security architect at Microsoft, and I focus on really all things security. Happy to be back here on Tech Talk with Agile IT. I want to take some time today and talk to you about the number one threat vector, and that's email phishing. And with email phishing comes things like spoofing, comes things like simulating attacks, basically any kind of threat you can think of that arrives over email is really what I want to try to focus on over the next 15 to 20 minutes. Of course, if I had you all day and all week, I can go really deep on this stuff. So I'm only going to kind of touch the tip of the iceberg here, but I really want to show you kind of what's possible and talk to you about some of the things that you may already own that's as part of your Office 365 subscription that can definitely help you with email phishing and email spoofing. So before I go there, I want to show you, and I could certainly make this available to Sean, and he could put it somewhere where you guys can download this. But I want to show you real quick a PowerPoint. So let me just minimize this and move this over here to the screen. I want to show you just a couple PowerPoint slides here on this topic, and I want to show this to you because I think it's really important. I think it's important that we really understand just how urgent email-borne threats really are. Here we have a study from McKinsey that really calls out some shocking things here. I mean, on average, the average cost of a data breach is $4 million. To me, that's pretty shocking. And whether you're a small business or a large enterprise, of course, your mileage is going to vary there, but that's time that's lost with your employees. That could be public relations hit with your customers. It could be your reputation. That could be customer data stolen. That can be in the case that Sean just mentioned, where your boss emails you and says, use my credit card number to buy a bunch of stuff, right? All of that cost adds up, and it's definitely something that a lot of our customers are starting to see, and we're starting to see. And so I wanted to kind of show you this slide, and that way we're all on the same page and really understand that cybersecurity, particularly email phishing, is a CEO issue. It's a big deal. I have, in my experience over the years, I've actually seen a couple companies, small companies, go out of business because of a data breach. And so we definitely don't want that to happen. And really, it starts with protecting email that's coming in. After all, email is the most universal thing in terms of communication. A lot of our business correspondence is over email. So how do we protect that? And how do we make sure that those messages coming in are safe? How do we make sure that they don't contain things like malware? They don't contain phishing links out to something else? How do we make sure they're coming from legitimate people and it's legitimate business correspondence and it's not a nation state or a hacktivist group or some kind of an attacker or a third party? And that's what I want to kind of show you today. So in this PowerPoint, I have quite a few slides. I'll make this available to Sean, and he can upload this to a place where you guys can download this. But I want to show you slide 5 here because I'm going to go through in just a minute and show you the admin console in Office 365 of where you can control some of this stuff. But we have a lot of different ways of protecting you when it comes to email-borne attacks. Everything from protecting against domain spoof to phishing attachments to impersonating a user, like impersonating the person from accounts payable or your CEO or your CFO. Being able to protect you against phishing for your credentials, to where I tricked you into entering your username and password. So all those types of protections are there. And all of that occurs within Office 365. And so we do that through 2 different mechanisms. The first mechanism is called Exchange Online Protection. And the second one's called ATP, or Advanced Threat Protection. And both of those work together to help protect you against this. So here in this diagram, you can kind of see some of that. So enough about the PowerPoint. We'll close that for now. We'll move back over here to my remote desktop, and we will go through the admin console. So we'll just make this full screen a little bit easier to look at here. So where do we start when it comes to protecting our inbound email and our outbound email for that matter? Well, really all things revolve around the Security and Compliance Center in Office 365. So when I log in here, we're going to go over to Admin Centers, and we're going to go down to Security Compliance. You could also get here by going to protection.office.com. Now I'm an admin, so you have to be an admin to be able to log into this. And then when I go into Threat Management, this is where I can configure policy. So I have some different policies that are available to me. This is not everything. Eventually, we're going to have more in here, but these 6 policies we're going to start with, and then I'll show you where you can configure some additional ones. So the first one I want to talk about is domain keys, or DKIM. And so what DKIM allows you to do is basically, in a nutshell, prevent somebody from spoofing by using a digital signature, by basically, and this is taking a moment to load there, by using a digital signature in the email message, and by basically encrypting the header in that message so that it becomes not impossible, but pretty darn expensive to be able to spoof. And so to set this up, it's actually pretty straightforward, and this is where someone like Agile IT can help you through the process to make sure it's seamless for you. But with DKIM, let me show you an article here that will walk you through it, and then we'll just discuss some of this and what this policy does. And so if you just go out to Bing or your favorite search engine and type in DKIM Office 365, you'll see a message that looks something like this. And this is where it'll explain what DKIM is and how it works together with your SPF records. We have a nice little diagram here around how this protects, but then what do you need to actually do this? It does require some DNS work, so you need to be able to publish a CNAME record in DNS, and then enable your domain for DKIM. And then you enable a few things inside Office 365 to do that. All in all, this is a very straightforward process, but it does take a little bit of planning because you could actually shut down email flow if you do this incorrectly. So you definitely want to make sure you pay attention to what you're doing here. But when it comes to being able to protect from being spoofed, DKIM is an absolute first place to start with. Again, this is called domain keys, or DKIM for short. And it just makes sure that other email systems, so if I sent you an email, making sure that your email system can trust messages from my email system. And if it's not coming from my email system, it's not going to trust that message. And it does that by using encryption on the header of that email. In addition to, there's a public key that you actually publish out there in the public. And so when you receive my email, you're using that public key to decrypt that message header. And then from there, it will allow you to understand whether or not that message has been spoofed or trusted. Unfortunately, there's not a way for me to really demo this. To the end user, it's seamless. They wouldn't know. right? So if I send you an email and I'm using DKIM, or you send me an email and you're using DKIM, there's no way for me as a recipient to know. It's all seamless to me. Just I use Outlook or my favorite mail app, and I can read my email as I normally would. If my company uses DKIM, I can send email just as I normally would. All of this occurs on the back end. And of course, this is included with Office 365. So there's no extra fee, no extra charge here for DKIM. It's just something I have to go in and configure. By default, this is not enabled. So keep this in your back pocket if you have a problem with spoofing, or if you think you might have a problem with spoofing. Take a look at DKIM. Certainly reach out to Agile IT as well, and Sean here, and we can see how we can work with you guys on getting this set up. But this is that first line of defense, as I would call it, as you start to protect against phishing attacks or attacks where somebody wants to spoof an email address. You'll commonly find this when somebody tries to spoof like the CEO of the company. So to Sean's example, I could spoof Conrad, CEO of Agile IT. Makes it look like it's coming from Conrad. It's coming from the Agile IT domain, but it's not really Conrad. It's an attacker. It's Matt. And then you would actually never know. And so using DKIM actually allows you to prevent that from happening. So keep this in your back pocket. DKIM is extremely powerful. I could spend all day talking about this and going really deep on how this works, but I only have a few minutes with you guys. But this is one of the things I wanted to bring up. And of course, if there are any questions or anything, feel free to put them in the chat window, and Sean will let me know here, and we'll get those answered for you. Okay, so let's go back to the Security Compliance Center, and whoops, go back one page here. So now we talked about DKIM a little bit. I want to talk about ATP, and I want to make sure we're clear about what ATP actually is. So when we say ATP in the Microsoft world, there could actually be different meanings of it because we have actually 4 ATP products. So in this context, when it comes to email phishing, I'm going to talk about Office 365 ATP, Advanced Threat Protection for Office 365. And what this allows me to do is a few different things. The first one is what we call safe attachments. So I'm going to hover my cursor over that and let me explain that. And then I'll show you a demo of this. Safe attachments allows me to scan, if you will, every attachment that comes into an email, into my environment. And when I scan that attachment, I'm actually executing it in a sandbox, and I'll explain more in a minute. And when I execute that attachment, it's running it just as a normal end user would, but in a safe, secured environment. And it's checking to see if that's a malicious attachment. Does it have malicious code? Does it have macros and that kind of thing? Does it contain malware? And if any of that's true, it actually strips the attachment out of the email message and never delivers it. It delivers the message, but not the attachment. Why is that important? Well, that now gives the user the opportunity to still receive the email message, but it never gives them the opportunity to actually click on the attachment, thus introducing a risk to your environment. And so when I buy ATP in Office 365, or if I have Office 365 and I've already purchased ATP, I have to come in here and enable this policy. And so when I enable safe attachments, there's a little bit of configuration here I have to do. But one thing I want to call out, though, is this is not just for email. ATP in Office 365 is also for SharePoint, OneDrive, and Microsoft Teams. And what that means is anytime I upload a file to SharePoint, OneDrive, or Microsoft Teams, it does the same thing as it would in an email. I upload the file to something like OneDrive, it's going to scan that file, detonate it as we would call it, and if it finds that file to be malicious, it strips it out and notifies the admin, and all is good. It never gives the user the opportunity to download and open that file. That could be really important, especially if you have guests coming into your environment, maybe contractors or a marketing agency, and they get access to SharePoint, OneDrive, or Teams. Look, you don't know who those people are. They could be uploading malicious files to your environment. Maybe one of their accounts got compromised, and there's an actual attacker on the other end uploading files to your environment, and then trying to compromise you. So this is where the value of ATP really comes into play. It's not just for email, but it's also for these other products. So rather than talking about it, let me show you what this is here. So this is my demo environment. So all of this is fake. This is not a real person, but just kind of play along with me here for a moment. Here I have an email Patty is my CEO. And so this is a case where Patty was actually spoofed. Maybe this environment, we don't have DKIM set up. We don't have some other policies set up. So Patty, she's the CEO. She got spoofed. And if I expand her contact card here, it's got Patty's photo. It's got Patty's email address. It's coming from Patty, but it's not really Patty. And here we have a message that says, I need to get the funds for the weekend event ASAP. Can you please have accounting wire transfer $3,000? Well, it also included an attachment, but check out the file name here. It says unsafe attachments are blocked. And when I open that, look what I have here. It says your attachments were found to be unsafe, and there's the name of the attachment. And I could see a little bit of information here about how ATP found them to be unsafe and protected me. So immediately I know that this probably is not Patty because there is a malicious attachment that's been stripped out, and I never have the ability to actually click on the attachment and run it. As we know, end users, they're in a hurry. They will just click on the attachment, especially if it's coming from Patty, your boss, and you may not think twice. And so this actually removes that capability from the user, and it kind of protects them against themselves, if you will. And so here it is, it's stripped it out. That's ATP safe attachments. Now, if we take this a step further, what about a link, a phishing link in that message? So here's an attacker spoofing Patty, the CEO. Hi, Megan, can you please fill out this form? And this form is hyperlinked, and ask others to do the same to register for the weekend's event. Well, again, I'm an end user. I'm in a hurry. It's coming from my boss. I need to get this done, right? It's got Patty's photo. It's got her email address when I expand this, right? It looks legit. It's even got her office phone number and room location. So I'm going to click on the link. Now, notice when I hover over the link, it's not the actual website here. It's actually pointed to a different URL. I'll explain why here in a minute, but let's click on the link and check it out. I was stopped in my tracks, and it said that this website's malicious. I cannot even continue on to that website. So immediately it stops me in my tracks and protects me from myself, if you will. I get this big red bar here flashing that says it's been classified as malicious. Now, I could add a policy here that allows you to continue onto the website, but of course, do so at your own risks. Now, what's happening here in the background is that URL in the email, it's actually being rewritten. And so here I can see how it's being pointed to something like safelinks.protection.outlook.com. And so when I click on that URL, it's being redirected to a Microsoft data center where they're scanning that URL and doing some other things in the back end to check to see whether or not it's legitimate, or it contains malicious code, or it's a phishing website, so on and so forth. So when we think about basic protections from something like email phishing, ATP safe attachments and ATP safe links is huge. I mean, if you could imagine implementing something like this, nothing's 100% secure. You're never going to get to a 100% secure environment in a secure state, but this could probably bring you, most of the way there, right? Maybe 70%, 80%. It's going to catch the low-hanging fruit, right? It's going to catch the stuff that, that we know about and that has been coming in. So that's a safe attachment, safe links. Now let's go back to the spoofing scenario for a moment. So I'm going to go over here to ATP anti-phishing. So as part of advanced threat protection, it's not just the safe links and the safe attachments capability. There's also capability to protect against spoofing and impersonation. So when I click on that, I have the option to create a policy, and I'm just going to go into my policy here. And as you can see, this can get pretty complex pretty quickly. And so definitely this is where somebody like Agile IT can help you through this and help make sense of this for you. But this allows me to do a few different things here. So let's step through it and I'll explain. So I'm just going to click on edit here. And so this allows me to protect VIPs, if you will, from being impersonated by attackers. It may not make sense to protect everybody in the company. If I'm just a regular individual contributor, just a regular employee, the chances of me getting spoofed is probably slim to none, right? Because after all, I don't have any value, right? However, if my role in the company is somebody that deals with money, CFO, accounts payable, maybe somebody else on the leadership team rather, then I'm going to be of more value to that attacker. And they're probably going to want to impersonate me. So going back to the example of Conrad and Sean, Conrad being the CEO, if I impersonate Conrad, then I could probably get Sean to do something like wire transfer me money because it's coming from Conrad, his boss, the CEO, and there's power there, there's influence there. Well, by enabling this allows me to protect those users, so somebody like Conrad, and I would simply add their name here. And so when an attacker goes to impersonate them, the system will see that it's being impersonated and not even deliver the message. It'll quarantine it or it'll just delete it. Now, consequently, I can also go through and I can enable select domains to protect. So maybe I want to do all the domains that I have, or I can just be selective depending on my business requirements. And then the action. So I mentioned being quarantining the message, but I have some additional actions here available to me. I can redirect it to another email address. I can delete it. But what I would recommend is don't move it to the recipient's junk email folder. Because remember, the name of the game here is you want to make sure you do everything in your power to prevent the user from ever opening the email and thus putting the organization at risk. So I would actually go as far as to say, let's quarantine the message. That way, somebody who's an admin has to go in there and pull it out if they need to, but it stays out of the hands of the users. And so as you can see, this can get complex pretty quickly. So all of this has to align to my business plan, if you will, and what are my business requirements around this. Now we have something else called mailbox intelligence. And so this is where we use machine learning and artificial intelligence to understand the mail flow patterns on how you communicate with your contacts and your recipients. And then this also allows us to understand whether or not, based on heuristics and the machine learning algorithm, whether or not you're being impersonated. So that's just another layer of protection. Again, we're all about defense in depth here. Now, if I have, and maybe I'm a little bit of a larger company and I have a PR agency or a marketing agency that sends out email newsletters to my customers, then I would have to add them here as a trusted sender. So they're legitimately impersonating or spoofing me for business purposes. So I can adjust that here. But this is where I would go in and add what we call an impersonation policy. And as you can see here, if we just go back a screen, there's quite a bit that I can do here to really fine tune this. Now, the last thing here is under advanced settings. This allows me to get really granular. And again, this is all based on machine learning and artificial intelligence. So if I enable this policy and I wait a few weeks and nothing's really happening, I'm still getting phishing emails coming through and I'm still getting impersonation emails coming through. Well, let's take this little slider here and slide it down a notch. Let's save it. Let's wait a few more weeks and continue to monitor and see if that helps. And this will basically adjust the amount of aggressiveness that the algorithm has when it goes through and analyzes the mail flow. So again, there's a lot here. If you're being subject to impersonation attacks or spoofing attacks or just phishing in general, definitely take advantage of some of these policies here. Let's go back a screen. I want to show you just a couple more things and we'll start to wrap up. So let's go back to our main policy here in the Security Compliance Center. And I talked about ATP anti-phishing, but let's talk about anti-spam. We'll give this a moment to load here. So phishing is different than spam. Phishing is where a bad actor is trying to steal your credentials, trying to get you to wire transfer money, trying to fish you, bait and hook you into doing something that you wouldn't normally do. Whereas spam is just messages coming into the environment that have no rhyme or reason. They could be phishing attempts, but they could also just be regular messages, maybe a newsletter or a coupon. I get those all the time, my personal email, that when you click on the link, maybe it redirects you to a malware website, installs malware on your PC. So there is a clear difference between spam and phishing. And my internet today is a little slow, so we'll just bear with me. But this anti-spam policy gets really granular. This is where you can block certain domains, certain IP addresses, again, using machine learning and artificial intelligence to have Microsoft intelligently go in and really understand whether or not this is spam. Gosh, this is taking a little too long to load. We may have to move on, refresh the page one more time here. This is my demo environment. I promise it's not this slow in production, but okay. Well, darn it, I really wanted to show you that. We'll come back to it if it wants to load. But there's a lot of different settings I can adjust for anti-spam. And then for anti-malware, any type of attachments in an email message that contain malicious code, malware, this allows me to adjust settings for that as well. And again, I have to enable this, right? A lot of this is not enabled by default. And so if we detect malware, here's where I can use a custom notification. Here's where I can filter out different types of attachment extensions, file extensions. Here I could send a notify to my internal sender, to an external sender, so on and so forth, right? Tons of different customization I can do here. And then all of this wouldn't be complete unless we had reporting. So if I go into threat management here and click on Explorer on the left, over time, as I tune these policies, now this is my demo environment. I don't have any actual traffic to show you here, so the report's going to be kind of blank. But over time, this is where I can come in and view how are my policies catching malware and the phishing emails and the spam and all those type of things. Now, I did do some tests here this morning for you all, and I uploaded a malicious file to my OneDrive. And let's see if it's been able to update here. Looks like it hasn't updated yet. But here is where I could actually see that piece of malware. It'll tell me the malware family. It'll tell me how long it took to scan. There's even a white paper that will be attached to that reporting entry that tells you what this malware is. So if this is something like WannaCry, there's a 50-page white paper that will explain in more detail what that is and how to protect yourself. So all the reporting is here. There's a lot to it, and this is where Sean and his team can maybe monitor this for you and help you make sense of this. But what I really wanted to show you all today is there's a lot to protecting against those email threats that's built into Office 365. And because it's part of Office 365, it's integrated. So you can be safe in knowing that the legitimate business correspondence will still be delivered, and then filter out all the bad stuff, if you will. And if I go to dashboard here, you can see all the different reporting and trends as well. This can actually be kind of scary. I've seen some customers where we turn this on and they come in here after a week or two and these dashboards are just lit up with malware trends and all these different types of malware detected in the environment. And then we start looking at their actual client PCs and endpoints and discover that they're infected. And we never knew about that until we turned this on. And so this could help you actually be proactive and trying to mitigate against those threats that are out there.